if it is showing. Okay,
Yes,
it's
we
showing.
can see a screen.
Fantastic. All right, awesome. All right, so hi everyone. Good evening. My name is Stephanie, and I am a tech talent advisor at OfferZen. I have been working in recruitment now for about 5 years, and today's session really is just geared towards leading you through your interview preparation masterclass. So my sole purpose really is to equip you enough so that by the end of the session, you'll kind of know what to expect at every stage of the interviewing journey, and also how to show up for it. All right, so take some notes. If you have any questions, you can prepare questions, and then at the end of the session, we can go through those. Okay. And then, yeah, I will also have this up at the end of the session. But what you want to do is scan the QR, because at the end, you can fill out that type form and there is a chance to win some OfferZen swag to some lucky attendees. All right, so let's get into it. Cool. So, some of the major themes that we're going to go through tonight are these, and you're going to hear them popping up quite a bit as I go through the session. But it's really showing up with confidence in your interviews. Okay, so from the early stages, from that first touch, that screening call, right until the final interviews. Hopefully at offer stages, you really just want to make sure that that confidence is coming through clear from the beginning to the end. Okay, you also want to really make sure that you communicate your value. All right, so in the current market, with how tough things are in the current tech market, the tech skills aren't going to be enough on their own. You're really going to have to come through and explain clearly your type of thinking and the type of impact that you can make. And then lastly, you want to be really cognizant of your positioning and visibility. So that presentation that you have through all the mediums, they're really going to shape the opportunities that are going to be available to you. Okay, so what we're basically going to cover in this session, number one, is the interview preparation itself. So from the early stages up until the final stages of the interviewing journey, we're going to go into some real depth with that one. Then I'm going to touch on your CV refinement. So structuring it and how to position yourself so that you can stand out. And then we'll go into a bit into the LinkedIn presence. So building that professional brand for yourself. And then lastly, I'll just briefly touch on overall presentation. So how you're going to show up, grooming, and also showing up for those virtual interviews. Okay, so in terms of the interviewing journey itself, processes can vary just depending on the company and the role, but most of them you'll notice follow a similar structure, and this is the structure that you have here. So knowing what to expect at each stage can really help you to prepare more intentionally, help you to show up with that confidence that I did mention. So typically that first stage is the screening call, and here really the assessment is just to see that there's an alignment in terms of you for the role as well as that company for you. This is a time where you can quickly discuss your experience, your skills, and your goals, and also just to learn a bit more about the company and the role itself. And then typically it moves forward to the technical stages. So here the evaluation is on your technical ability. All right. And at this stage, you're going to realize that it's really important to be able to structure your thinking and be able to walk through that thinking in your approach. Okay. And here communication is going to be really key. And then moving on to the cultural fit interview, which usually happens in the final stages. And the assessment here is on that alignment with the team, with the company values. And it's also sometimes the opportunity that you get to meet the team and visit the offices if they do have offices. And also a chance for you to ask any final questions that you might still have. And then sometimes, just depending on the company, on the opportunity, then there could be psychometric assessments, and this is just assessing your cognitive abilities, really. Okay, right, cool. So going into some detail, starting with mastering those screening calls. So the first mistake that a lot of candidates make is that they treat the screening call as though it's informal, but it's not. It's really the first opportunity that you have to sell yourself, okay? Especially because you can't use body language over the phone. It means that what you're going to say is going to carry a lot of weight, and it's really going to be everything at this stage. Okay, so you also want to be conscious of your environment. So if you get that screening call and you're in a busy place, in a busy area, where possible, find a quiet space, so that you can have a calm conversation with the interviewer. And if you can, if you're at a desk, you just make sure you have pen and paper to jot down anything that you might need to jot down. But you do want to prepare for these as though they are face to face. Okay, you have already put in the application, so you want to make sure that you research the company and the role so that you have an understanding of who it is that is calling you. Okay, I know what it's like when you're job hunting at that stage. You're kind of putting applications to a lot of companies, and yeah, sometimes you can get lost in who's who. So when you are doing those applications, jot down the company and potentially even the contact person, especially like on LinkedIn. It does give you the name of who has put out that opportunity. So just prepare and manage those applications so that you understand who is calling you and which role it's for. Okay. And at that point, also, you want to speak clearly and make sure that your responses are focused. You don't want to have any vague answers. This can really get lost and it's quite damaging over a screening call. All right. And there's always this one question that will come up. So you do want to be prepared for it. And it's the classic tell me about yourself. So that's self introduction. Because you know it's going to come up, you do want to prepare a 30 to a 60-second pitch, and you want to keep it simple, you want to keep it sweet, and if you can, just include any impressive information that you have on yourself or any relevant highlights at this stage. Okay, so if you know it's going to come up, prepare one in advance, and you can use a very similar one for any screening call that you receive. So an example here might be, hi, so and so, thanks for taking the time to speak with me. I'm a software dev with about 3 years of experience, mainly working with JavaScript and React. In my current role, I led a project where I rebuilt part of our front end system, which improved load times by 50% for over 3,000 users. I really enjoy building user focused products and solving performance problems. I'm now looking for an opportunity where I can work on larger scale systems and continue growing, which is why this role caught my attention. Okay, so just 30 to 60 seconds, but it's already given the interviewer so much information. They know exactly who you are, the kind of impact that you could potentially bring, and this will make them want to continue the process with you. Okay, so that's on screening calls. And then when it comes to, excuse me, technical interviews, the numbers don't lie. And as you can see here, there is a 46% fail rate for technical interviews, which means that roughly 1 in 2 candidates fail at this stage. Okay, so a very crucial one. And what you want to do is you want to be really prepared for this, because this is where a lot of candidates fall off. So they know, the candidates themselves, they know what they're doing, but when it comes to explaining it clearly, they struggle at that point. And so the interviewer is measuring your process and your skills, but equally at the same time they are assessing your communication as well as your composure. So how you handle the review of that technical. All right. So keep these things in mind. There is no obligation for you to jump straight into coding. When you are asked a question, take some time to pause, and if need be, repeat that question back to the interviewer in your own words, just to confirm your understanding. All right. So some interviewers might deliberately leave out some details just to test whether you'll catch them on. So yeah, you want to make sure that you really do have an understanding of the question, and ask clarifying questions before you start. So things like, how large is the input? Are there any duplicates? What are the constraints? All of these questions, they really signal that you're careful and methodical, and that you take the time to think before you act. All right. And talk while you're coding. So explain what you're building at a high level as you write it. So not reading your code, but rather narrating the thinking. So interviewers can't evaluate what they can't see. And so your reasoning is going to be a huge part of what's being assessed. And then, of course, when it comes to your code, write clean and readable code. So avoid the copy paste errors. Structure your code really as how you would in production. Okay. And if you do get stuck, just remember that getting stuck is not failure, but it is part of the test. So what really matters here is how you respond to it. Okay. So talk through maybe what you thought would work. Yeah, and just show that you can still have structured thinking even under the pressure. Okay. Yeah, so at the end, also review and test, and just make sure that you are showing that you do have that attention to detail. Okay. Another big one is going to be the soft skills. So interviewers, they are measuring beyond just the technical, that structured thinking, the can you explain your reasoning clearly under pressure? Practice narrating your thought process. You'll find that the candidates who can clearly communicate well, they will beat the ones that get the right answer in silence. Okay. And at this stage, you also want to use ownership language. So saying things like, I built, not we built. Own your specific contributions, because interviewers are hiring individuals. Okay. And then once again, having that composure and the uncertainty. It's okay to not know. It's okay to say things like, I'm not certain, but here's how I thought, here's how I'll think it through. That on its own is also a strong answer. And if you bluff, the interviewer is going to know. All right. And then what you want to do here is also engage in active listening. So like I mentioned before, it's okay to pause before answering. And I know with people, it's hard to be comfortable with silence, especially if you feel like you're being scrutinized, but it can be really necessary. So just that slight pause to think and gather your thoughts can really make a huge difference, because what you're trying to achieve is answering what's actually being asked. Okay, so when need be, just take your time. Okay, and then this one, I'm sure a lot of you might also be familiar with it, the STAR framework. Excuse me. So this is how you can structure the behavioral, the answers. Okay, so it's also a common one that pops up, and this is the question of, tell me about a time when. So at this point, you beforehand, you want to prepare at least 5 or 6 star stories from any projects that you've done, and you want to adapt them to the specific question. So you want to highlight things like the situation. So this is the context, the task. So what was your specific role or responsibility in that particular situation? The action. So what did you do specifically? And you want to speak again in the first person, as well as the results. So what was the measurable outcome? And where you can add numbers, add scale, or any highlights. Okay, so a good example of situation would be, in my final project, we built a web app for booking study spaces, but it started running slowly under multiple users. That's the situation, the task. I needed to identify the issue and improve performance without changing core functionality. When it comes to action, you want to say something like, I analyzed the back end, found inefficient database queries, and implemented caching and query optimization through indexing. I then tested the system under load to ensure stability. And then lastly, the results. So this reduced response times by over 60% and improved overall performance, allowing the system to handle concurrent users smoothly. Okay, so this one is definitely also going to come up in your technical interviews. Be prepared for it so that you can answer calmly. All right. And then ritual reminders before you go into the interview process. Number one, most importantly, like I did briefly mention, you want to research the company, and where you can, if you can, research the challenges. So some might be transparent on their LinkedIn or even on their blogs. So if you can identify any challenges that they're going through, perfect, so that you can bring it up in the interview process. And then you want to practice out loud. So for your screening calls, for your technicals, all of these stages, practice, practice, and practice out loud. Okay. Manage the nerves before the interview. So take your time before these interviews, especially if it's going to be face to face, but even if it's online, you just want to make sure that you're in a calm state before you tackle them. And then when it comes to your technicals, especially for the assessments, if you find that they've asked you to complete it in a programming language that you're not familiar with, there really is the space for you to ask to complete it in a language that you are comfortable with. Okay, so if that particular language is something that you know on a surface level, feel free to ask them if you can complete it in your strongest programming language. Okay, there definitely is space for that. And then lastly, of course, be ready to talk about AI. In 2026, if you say that you do not work with AI, it's going to be a red flag. All right. I don't think there's anyone who's not working with AI. So be prepared to just talk about, the tools that you're currently working with in your workflow. Okay, because that question, how do you use AI in your day to day, is going to be a standard question. So make sure that you have real answers and very specific answers prepared for that one as well. And then towards the end, you'll get to the cultural fit interviews. And these are going to matter just as much as the technical. Yeah, don't underestimate these, because really what's being evaluated here is that the company doesn't just want talented engineers, they really want to see who they can work with. Okay, so as you go into these, remember to stay professional, be factual in your answering, and solution focused. Connect any answers that you have to the research that you've done on that company. So show the curiosity, show how you potentially align with that company, with its culture. Another thing that can help you in cultural interviews is to reach out to people on LinkedIn. At the companies that you've applied to. So the employees, they just say, I'm in the process currently with your company, just wanted some insight as to what the culture is like and all of that. It's perfectly fine for you to do that. And then you also want to emphasize the impact that you could bring to that business, to that organization. So show how you can contribute to a positive team environment. Okay, so a brilliant person who can't collaborate, who can't communicate, who can't navigate conflict is not going to be a good fit for the team. So the one question that the culture fit interview exists to answer is, will this person make the team better? Okay. And especially as you become more senior, those behavioral and people skills interviews, they're going to carry a lot more weight than the technical ones, because at that stage the hiring managers are asking, can this person lead, can they influence, can they adapt? And so you want to start building those muscles now, even as juniors. So some of the questions that you can prepare for as you go into these cultural fit interviews are questions like, tell me about a time when you had conflict with a coworker. Be prepared to answer that one, and be prepared to answer it factually, but still remaining kind. You don't want to badmouth anyone. All right. Another question that you can prepare for is, what is the most difficult bug that you fixed in the last 6 months? Or why do you want to work for X company? And that's a big one. Why do you want to work for that company? Okay. And also, like, what are you looking for in your next role? So also make sure that you have an understanding of what it is that you're looking for. And then onto psychometric assessments. And these can be quite daunting. I do understand that. But if you prepare beforehand, that can become an advantage. So, what you can expect, and why companies use these, especially the larger companies, the ones that have very structured hiring processes, they could ask you to complete a psychometric assessment. And there's two that you can sort of expect here. So one, the reasoning and cognitive tests. And here, what you want to do is you want to familiarize yourself with the format. So these are those abstract ones, those really tricky ones. They're non-verbal, they pattern based, they use shapes, and you can't really prepare any knowledge beforehand for these ones. But what you can do is you can search for abstract reasoning practice tests online, and just like a 20-minute practice of this before the psychometric can make a big difference. Okay. And what you want to do is do the hard assessments first thing in the morning if possible. If you can schedule them for the morning, do that, because those reasoning assessments, they require a lot of mental energy and a lot of focus. So do it at the time when your mind is the sharpest, which is typically in the mornings. So don't do it after a long day or after back-to-back assessments or something like that. Okay, so really time the energy that you can bring into it, and then don't worry too much about finishing to finishing on time, because the score is going to matter more. So skip the questions where you feel like they're too hard, and it just carry on, because at this point the accuracy is going to matter more than the completion. Okay. And then the easier ones are your personality questionnaires. And these are not a test, they are questionnaires. So just keep it in the back of your mind that there is no wrong answer, there is no right answer. It's really just about you being honest and transparent about, the type of person that you are. So even as you answer those questions, don't do it to perform. Be honest about who you are within the work context. Okay. And you'll find that these results can actually help you. The company even uses those results to understand how they can manage you, how they can set you up to succeed, how they can, set up your particular onboarding. All right. And then towards the end of interview processes, typically there is some time that you can ask questions. So yes, you've come to the end of the interview process and probably you've gained a lot of information about who they are, the role, etc. But there might still be a few areas where you feel like they haven't covered. And so at this stage, that is when you can bring those up. So if you feel like, okay, I don't really know what the growth opportunities, for example, are like, this is the time that you can ask those questions. So, for example, um, role and success, you can ask, what qualities do you look for in someone in this type of role? When it comes to growth, what are the development opportunities that are available at this particular company? The team, what is unique about working here? When it comes to culture, how does the team approach adopting new technologies. So you'll find that there's always going to be space, there's always going to be room for a few meaningful questions, and it really is going to show that you're engaged and that you are interested in the core aspects of the role and of that company. Okay. And then CV writing, refining the CV. You want it to look something like this, okay? You want it to be simple, you want it to be clean, you want it to be scannable by both the interviewer as well as the ATS systems, especially if it's an ATS system. If everything looks too complicated, it's not going to be able to read it, and then it's going to reject you. So you also want to avoid those tables, the text boxes, the complex graphics. Yes, they do look nice, but practically this is the best format to go with. And you want to stick to 1 to 2 pages maximum. And you just want to prioritize the readability over the design. So like, for example, with this one in front of you, you've got your contact details at the top there. You've got a strong summary. Copy and paste your experience, your qualifications, put them into your preferred LLM. Let it spit out a strong summary for you to add onto your CV. You want to have your work experience there. So in terms of the role that you were in, the name of the company, as well as a time frame of how long you were at that company, and then the details of that role. If you made any significant impact, please pop it in there. And you want it to be specific and tailored to the company or to the role. So if you have any experience where it has nothing to do with the role that you're applying for, just leave that information out. Okay. Your skills, you want to put your hard skills there, your technical skills. You want to put the skills that you currently have experience in. So not the skills that you want to work with. They want to be able to see what you currently have as a skill set. All right. And then in terms of your education, put your education there. Once again, you want to put the date there as well. And then just briefly any coursework that you did within that education. And then there's space for you to put others. So if you're involved in any communities or if you want to pop in your projects there, your GitHub link, there is space for that. Okay. So especially as graduates and juniors, you want to put projects above the work experience. You want to put your 2 to 4 strong projects and make sure that they really communicate the problem, the tech stack, the contribution, and the outcome. Okay, and then your LinkedIn presence. This is a profile that's going to work for you while you sleep, literally. So in the competitive market that we're in, that profile is gonna matter more than ever. All right. Recruiters are actively sourcing candidates. So if your profile can't clearly communicate your value, you're going to become invisible to the people who are looking to hire people like you. All right. So building that presence, building that brand, and you want your LinkedIn to look something similar to this. So some of those key elements are going to be that headline. So right underneath your name, you want to put your role, any skills that you have, and any potential value that you could add. In terms of the picture, you want a really professional picture there, nothing blurry. It just needs to look good. And then a nice cover, professional cover there as well, if you can. And then that about section is the meat of your profile. So you want to go into detail as to, once again, your qualifications, your skills, and even your career direction. So in terms of where you see yourself going or the type of role that you want to see yourself in. You also want to add in your top skills. And once again, these need to be skills that you are currently working with. Okay. And then you have a featured section. So you want to pin your projects, your best projects, your GitHub link, as well as your portfolio. And then in terms of the content, you do just want to make sure that it is speaking about, the value that you can bring or any projects that you're currently working on. So for example, I finished X project. This is what I would do differently next time, etc. So you want to post maybe once a week if possible. But even twice a month if it's bad, type of thing. But you do want to be engaging. You do want to be putting out some content so that you can build visibility. Okay, and then lastly, in terms of showing up and presenting yourself, so how you show up, it also matters in terms of your grooming, your first impressions. We all know that first impressions last and they speak volumes. So in terms of your dressing, dress decently, make sure you're covered, nothing too tight, etc. Your hair neat, clean grooming. And body language needs to be relaxed, it needs to be welcoming, it needs to be friendly. You want to make sure that you have a big smile, all of those things, and you want to make sure that you are present within that environment. Okay, and for all of this, just make sure you prepare the night before, so you've got an interview the next day. Do your research, get calm, just get in the right mind frame, because the market is competitive and the people who are going to show up the best are going to have the better chances, even when it comes to those virtual interviews. So treat them as in-person interviews. Okay, so you want to dress up as well. Yes, they can't see the full body, but just dress up, do it for yourself. But also the top part, you do want it to be presentable. You want to join 5 minutes early if you can, so that you can test your mic, test your camera, and all of these things. You also want to be mindful of your background. So if you do have like a white clear background or wall behind you, that's great. But if not, blur it or put a virtual background. In terms of lighting, you want to face the natural light, so that light hits you in front. If it hits you from the back, it's going to create a silhouette, it's going to create a shadow. And then also be prepared for power cuts. So have maybe some data on your phone, so that if you do lose power, you can reconnect, after like 5 minutes or so. So just make sure that you prepare for that as well, and then do your technical checks, make sure everything is working okay. um, yeah, and that's about it. So yeah, before I open the floor for any questions, we have covered a lot today. But I do just want to reiterate the fact that I work with tech talent every day. I see what gets people hired, I see what holds people back. And so the gap is not always technical. It comes down to that confidence, it comes down to the communication and the preparation, okay? But every one of you is hireable. You must know that. You just need to communicate your value. You've already got the qualifications, you've got the skills. The session was really more about, talking about closing the gap between what you know and what gets you a seat at the table. Okay, so know your worth, everyone is hireable, and interviewing on its own is a skill, and it does get sharper every time that you use it. Okay, any questions?
Thank you so much, Stephanie. I think the ladies, if you have any questions, you can just unmute and then ask your questions. If there are no questions, I think that will be all for tonight.
Okay.
We'll just give them 5 minutes and then we'll close off.
Okay, sure, no worries at all. Yeah, you can unmute if you have any questions. I have also just put back that slide with the QR code for you to complete the form and stand a chance to win some swag.
Jennifer?
Hi.
Hi, Jennifer.
Hi. First of all, I'd like to say thank you so much for this and for the explanations. I feel like you explained almost everything clearly. I joined a bit late, so I was wondering if we can be able to get access to the slides because I joined where you were talking about the cultural fit.
Okay, sure. Yeah, no problem. I'll definitely do that. I'll organize with Zintle and make sure that the slides can be sent forward to you guys.
Okay, thank you so much.
No worries.
Again,
You're
thank you
welcome.
for this.
You're
You
welcome.
explained it so clearly.
I'm so happy to hear that.
Hi, I also have a question.
Hi,
Um,
Elisiwe.
Hi. First of all, thank you so much for offering your time to do this. My question is when it comes to applications, um, not every company really gives you that closure of um, formally rejecting you, like sending you a rejection email. They just kind of ghost you in a sense. So when it comes to like follow up etiquette, because I've been seeing online a lot of people being like, sometimes the reason why you're not hired is loosely because you're not persistent enough, like you don't, show that you want it. But when it comes to like follow up etiquette, what's the best way to follow up? What's the time frame? How many times should you follow up? Yeah,
Yeah.
essentially.
Okay, cool. No, good question. And what you've been coming across is correct. So you do want to be following up. Another important thing is to remember that hiring is not linear. Sometimes the hiring manager can go on holiday, or a role has been put on hold, or so many different things can come into that process, and just yeah. So you do want to be following up. The rule of thumb, and I know it's so annoying, but try to follow up even 3 times, up to 3 times, because also at the moment, the supply is just outweighing the demand, and companies are experiencing a lot of applications. They're inundated with the applications, so they can really lose sight on being able to attend to everyone. That's why when you get a chance, you really need to show up for those interviews. So also time frame wise, if you've put in an application and you haven't heard back in about 3 to 5 working days. Yeah, go ahead and follow up. I know sometimes there is a disclaimer where it says if you haven't heard in 2 weeks, just consider this application unsuccessful. But where you can, after 3 to 5 business days, go ahead and follow up, and make sure as well that the way that you write that follow up is decent. So if you feel like you're not a strong email communicator, ask an LLM to help you with it, because I come across some candidates who say the darnest things. They might be like, "Hi, I haven't heard back." And no, that's not how you're going to communicate with these companies. So just make sure that that follow up is also really professional. Make sure that you have also added in your contact details, so your cell phone number, your email address, so that it's easy. And also sometimes that follow up is a quick nudge in the process of these people just being inundated with those applications. Yeah, I hope that answered your question.
It did, thank you. And then just sort of like piggybacking off of my first question is with applications that you do that aren't really on a portal, where you have to like email your CV and stuff to them. If they're not responding to like the initial email and perhaps like the first two follow-up emails, is it advisable to like call the office number if you do have, or you know what I mean? Or is that
Yeah.
too much?
You know what? In the current market, you're going to have to be aggressive. You're going to have to be aggressive. So if you do have that contact number, it's perfectly fine to go ahead and call and just say, hi, I put in my application on such and such a date. This is my name. This is my surname. I know there's this particular role that's open. And, I was wondering if I could get a chance. Just depending on, who's on the other side of that call, maybe they'll say, okay, we'll look into it, or we'll get back to you, or they'll transfer you to the correct contact person. But yeah, with the way things are tough, I think, yeah, holding back is going to actually do more harm.
Got you. Thank you.
Welcome. Anyone else?
Me again. With
good.
Sorry.
No, all good.
With LinkedIn, with the like trying to post once a week, basically trying to post as often as you can to boost visibility.
Yeah.
I guess I think when you're in university, you can kind of like post about things that you're currently learning. But as someone who has like graduated and isn't enrolled in a course and is still like job seeking,
Yeah.
then what really can you post on LinkedIn like that frequently to maintain visibility? Because I
Yeah.
think we don't get up to as many things consistently enough to be able to write about it.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So with that one, even reposting, if you've come across content that you're really keen on or really aligns with where you're currently at, where you're headed in terms of your career, repost it and then just comment something, just add your 2 cents there. There is that space for you to write on top of that. Talk about why it's interesting to you, or why it aligns with what you're currently doing or what you want to do. So in the case that you don't have enough projects, you can do that. And then also, once again, LLM, just say, hey, this is who I am. This is what I'm currently doing. I'm a graduate, or whatever the case may be. Give me some ideas on some LinkedIn posts that I could write about or post about. It's going to give you the answers. And yeah, just tailor it to yourself. Make sure that it sounds natural to you, and like really authentic to you and your interests. So in that sense, you do have the help of your chat GPTs and all of that, but also reposting mindfully in terms of commenting accurately. That on its own is also going to be helpful.
Gotcha. Thank you.
No worries, you're welcome. Anyone else? That might be everyone. Sinclair?
Yes, no, I think we can close it off. As I mentioned, I have recorded the sessions for those that joined early. I see a question, how to best answer, Mandisa, how to best answer, tell me about yourself on an interview. Yes, I think you can take that. I think you did answer it during the presentations,
Yeah.
but you can touch on it a bit before we close it off.
Yeah, sure. Okay, cool. So yeah, tell me about yourself. It's your pitch. It's that self-introduction. You want to make sure that you've really highlighted your experience, some of your qualifications, and any impact that you've made with anything, with any project or anything like that. So yeah, so you're going to talk about who you are, what you're currently doing, any particular skills that you're working with, JavaScript, React, what you're currently doing in your role, or if you're studying, or if there's a project that you're working on, or a project that you led, and what the outcome was after that particular project. and then you can just explain the type of role that you're looking for, the type of opportunity that you're looking for, and even potentially why that particular role piqued your interest. Okay, so don't take too long with it, 30 to 60 seconds, but just make sure that it gets straight to the point on the important points.
Hey, thank you so much for that. I'm not sure if you'll be announcing the winners now
So I
or
I won't be able to do it now, but
okay.
yeah, it is being managed by the swag department. So yeah, I'll check in with
Okay,
them
okay.
tomorrow and see what the results are, and then I'll pass them on to you, Zintle, and then
All
you
right.
can let them know.
Okay, not a problem. Thank you so much for joining us, Stephanie. It was a very informative session. As I mentioned, I have recorded the session, and I will also share the presentation slides so that they're also able to go through them at their own time. Otherwise, yeah, thank you so much. Do enjoy the rest of your evening, and thank you for sacrificing your time, actually.
No
So
worries, thank you. I'm so sorry about the mix-up earlier with the link and all of that while I was sitting there
no
by myself.
problem.
But no, thank you
No
so much. It was really
worries.
nice also joining you guys. And yeah, best of luck, everyone.
Alrighty. Bye,
All
ladies.
right,
Enjoy the rest of your
thanks.
evening.
Enjoy.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.